The night was cruel and endless. The wind cut through the broken land like knives. The sky above was filled with black clouds, and the ground was white with heavy snow. Every breath turned into ice in the air. The frozen world was silent, but it was the silence of death. In the middle of that storm, a woman stumbled through the snow. She was not human. Her skin carried faint silver lines, her eyes glowed weakly. She was an alien mother, weak and broken. In her arms, she carried her tiny child wrapped in torn cloth. The cloth was not enough. The baby's small body shivered and cried softly. The mother pressed the child close to her chest. Her arms were shaking, but she would not let go. Her body was cold, her heart heavy. She looked around but saw no hope. Her village had been destroyed, her people scattered. She was the last one left alive. The hunters had taken everything from her, her home, her food, her family. Now the storm would take the rest. Her legs gave way, and she fell to her knees in the snow. The child whimpered. Weakly, the mother closed her eyes. Her body trembled. She knew this was the end. No fire, no shelter, no help. She kissed the child's cold forehead and whispered, "Forgive me." Her tears froze on her face as she wrapped the cloth tighter around the child. She closed her eyes, waiting for the cold to claim them both. The world grew darker, the storm louder. Her heartbeat slowed. She thought this was death. But then, warmth. At first, she thought it was a dream. A soft heat spread across her frozen skin. Strong hands lifted her child from her arms. The warmth grew stronger as something heavy and thick covered her shoulders. She forced her eyes open, and for the first time in the endless night, she saw him, a man, a human. His face was scarred, his eyes sharp, his breath turned into mist, but he did not shiver like she did. He carried strange gear on his back and wore a heavy coat. His coat now covered both the child and her, the human, knelt in the snow, pulling them close, his body heat wrapped around them. The child stopped crying, breathing against his chest. The mother blinked in confusion. Why would a stranger, why would a human be here, on this dead world? The man did not speak. His movements were calm and careful. He reached into his pack and pulled out a strange device. Sparks flew, and soon, a small fire burned in the snow. The light of the fire reflected on his eyes, making them glow with a fierce determination. The mother stared, too weak to move. She wanted to ask who he was, why he had come, but no words left her lips. She could only watch. The man placed the child near the fire, wrapping the coat around both mother and child. He pressed the coat tighter, making sure no cold air touched them. His hands were rough, scarred, but gentle. For the first time in days, the mother felt warmth. It was fragile, but real. She blinked back tears. Her child breathed easier, tiny chest rising and falling with steady rhythm. She looked at the man again. His face carried shadows of pain, old battles written in every scar. Yet his eyes showed no fear, only resolve. He sat with them by the fire, silent, watchful, guarding them from the storm. The mother closed her eyes, but this time not in surrender. Her mind was filled with questions. Who was this human? Why save her and her child? Why risk himself in the frozen death? The fire crackled. The storm howled outside. But in that small circle of light and warmth, she and her child lived. They had been ready to die. Yet here they were, alive in the arms of a stranger. The mother clutched her child closer, whispering thanks too soft for the man to hear. The human only stared into the fire, his jaw tight, his body ready as if he expected the storm to bring more than just snow. The night was far from over. The cold world was still dangerous. But one thing had changed. The mother was no longer alone. A human had found her, and humans, she would soon learn, were never simple travelers. They were storms of their own. The storm raged through the endless night. But inside the circle of firelight, 3 figures stayed alive. The alien mother, her tiny child, and the human who had appeared from nowhere. The mother opened her eyes slowly. The fire still burned, and warmth still touched her frozen skin. For a moment she thought she had dreamed it all, but no. The man was still there, sitting with his back straight, watching the flames. His coat was wrapped tightly around her and the child. His breath rose in white clouds, but he did not seem to feel the cold. Her child was asleep against his chest, breathing softly. For the first time since the fall of her village, the child was safe. The mother's heart ached. She should be the one protecting her child, yet here was a stranger, a human, doing what her own people would not. She tried to speak. Her voice came out, cracked and weak. "Why?" The man turned his head slightly. His eyes met hers, sharp and deep. For a moment he said nothing. Then in a low voice he answered, "Because no child should die in the cold." His words were simple, but they struck her heart like a blade. No one from her kind had shown her such mercy. Yet this human who owed her nothing sat in the snow and gave his warmth. She studied him carefully. His face was lined with scars, thin cuts across his cheek, a burn mark near his jaw. His hands were rough, his knuckles broken many times. He looked like a man who had fought 100 battles and carried the weight of each one. But there was something else in him, something she could not name. He looked tired, not from the storm, but from life itself, as if the cold world outside could never be harsher than what he had already faced. The fire crackled, the storm howled, the mother pulled the coat tighter around her child. She wanted to ask more, but her throat was dry. She had no strength. The man noticed. He reached into his pack and brought out a small container. He poured water into her shaking hands. It was warm water. He must have kept it close to his body. She drank slowly, her lips trembling. It was the sweetest water she had ever tasted. She whispered, "Who are you?" The man's eyes softened, but he did not answer fully. He only said, "A traveler." The mother wanted to believe him, but his scars told another story. A traveler did not fight with such wounds. A traveler did not walk into a frozen grave and pull strangers back to life. The child stirred in his arms. The man shifted gently, holding the tiny body as if it were made of glass. The child made a soft sound, then pressed closer to him. Even in sleep, the child trusted him. The mother felt both fear and wonder. Why would her child cling to a human so easily? Why did his presence feel so steady, so unshakable when everything else in her life had fallen apart? The man fed the fire again. The sparks rose into the dark sky. For a long while they sat in silence. The storm raged, but inside the firelight the world seemed smaller, quieter. Then the man spoke again. His voice carried a weight that made her shiver. "This land is not safe. They will come again." The mother's heart froze. She knew who he meant. The hunters. The ones who had destroyed her village. The ones who had taken everything from her. If they found her alive, they would not stop until she and her child were gone. Fear filled her eyes. She clutched her child tightly. They will come," she whispered. The man nodded. His hand rested on the hilt of a blade strapped to his side, a weapon unlike any she had seen before, forged not of her people's metal, but human steel. "They always come," he said, "but if they come tonight, they will find me waiting." The firelight flashed across his face, and for the first time she saw it clearly. He was not just a traveler. He was a fighter, a soldier, maybe even a survivor of wars greater than she could imagine. The storm screamed outside, carrying with it distant echoes. At first, she thought it was only the wind, but then she heard it. Voices, faint but real, carried by the cold, her breath caught. Her hands trembled. The hunters. They were out there, searching. The human stood slowly, careful not to wake the child. His shadow stretched across the snow, tall and unbroken. He reached for his blade, his coat falling open. The firelight revealed the full map of scars across his body, wounds from battles long past. The mother's heart raced. She wanted to beg him to run, to hide. But his eyes told her there would be no running. Humans, she realized, did not bend to fear. The man glanced at her once, and for the first time a small smile crossed his lips. It was not warm, but sharp. the smile of someone who had faced death too many times. "Stay close to the fire," he said. "Keep the child warm." The voices outside grew louder. The shadows moved in the storm. The man stepped forward into the darkness. His blade gleamed. In the light of the fire, the mother held her breath, clutching her child. The storm roared, the voices neared, the fire cracked, and the human disappeared into the snow. The night was no longer silent. Something was coming. And the stranger in the snow was ready? The fire still burned in the snow, but its light felt fragile. The mother sat close to it, her child pressed against her chest. Her ears caught every sound outside, every crack of ice, every whisper of the storm. But the man had gone into the darkness and she could no longer see him. Minutes passed like hours. She stared at the shadows, expecting hunters to break through the storm at any moment. But the snow swallowed all sound. The only thing she could hear was the weak breath of her child and her own racing heartbeat. Then, footsteps. Heavy, steady, strong. She turned her head sharply. Fear clawed at her chest, but then the firelight revealed him, the human. He stepped back into the circle of warmth, his blade dark with frozen blood. Her mouth opened, but no words came. He wiped the blade with the snow, then sat down across the fire, as if nothing had happened. His expression was calm, but his eyes carried shadows. He had killed again. And, for him it was nothing new. The mother wanted to ask what he had done, how many he had fought, but she kept silent. Instead, she whispered, They will come again." The man nodded slowly, his gaze locked on the fire. "Yes," he said, "but not tonight." The mother clutched her child closer. Her people had never been able to stand against the hunters, yet this one man fought them like they were nothing. How could a human hold such strength? She studied him in silence. The more she looked, the more questions filled her heart. Finally, she whispered, "Why are you here? No one comes to this world, not unless they want to die." The man did not look at her. His hand rested on his blade. His eyes reflected the flames. "I did not come here to die," he said quietly. "I came here because I was sent away." The mother frowned. "Sent away?" His lips tightened. He seemed to weigh his words carefully. "There was a war," he said at last. "A war bigger than this storm, bigger than your hunters. A war where millions fought. I was one of them." Her breath caught. She had heard stories of humans, how they were fire in battle, how they never gave up. Some said humans were dangerous, cursed even. But now, sitting before her, she saw the truth in his scars. "What happened?" she asked softly. The man's jaw clenched. For a long time he was silent. Then he said, "I fought too long. I lost too many my people. They did not want me among them anymore." His voice broke slightly, though he tried to hide it. "So, I keep walking until the walking ends." The mother stared. His words were heavy with pain. He was not just a fighter, he was a man carrying ghosts. Ghosts of a war she could not imagine. Her child stirred in her arms. She rocked the baby gently, her heart softened. For all his scars and strength, he was broken too. "You saved us," she whispered. "Why, if you are so tired?" The man finally looked at her. His eyes burned with something fierce, something unshakable. "Because no one saved me," he said. "Because no one should be left to freeze in the dark, not while I still breathe." The words struck her deeply. She lowered her gaze. Her people had abandoned her, left her to die. Yet this man, this human who owed her nothing, stayed, fought, and shared his fire. Silence settled again. The storm outside screamed, but the firelight kept them safe for now. The mother wanted to ask more, to know his story fully, but she could see his pain. Some wounds could not be opened in one night. Instead, she said softly, "Your people, they sent you away, but maybe they were wrong." The man gave her a faint, sad smile. "Maybe," he said, though his eyes did not believe it. The fire began to fade. He stood and added more fuel, sparks flying upward into the night. The storm, roared louder, carrying with it a low howl, a sound too sharp, too cruel to be only wind. The mother stiffened. She knew that sound. The hunters were not finished. They were still searching. The man heard it too. His hand tightened on his blade. He turned to her and said firmly, "Rest while you can. Tomorrow will not be easier." The mother wanted to protest, to say she could not sleep with danger outside, but the weight of exhaustion pressed heavy on her. Her body gave in. Her eyes closed slowly as she drifted into uneasy sleep. Her last thought was of him, the stranger in the snow, the human who carried secrets of battles far greater than her own. He was scarred, broken, and cast out by his people. But here in this frozen wasteland, he was her only hope. And in the firelight, as the mother and child slept, the human sat awake, guarding them. His eyes watched the storm, his blade ready. His past was filled with ghosts, but tonight he had something worth protecting. The fire burned low, its orange light fighting against the endless night. The mother slept with her child pressed close, their bodies wrapped in the human's coat. They were fragile shadows curled together, clinging to warmth. But the man did not sleep. He sat with his back to the fire, his eyes fixed on the storm beyond. His hand rested on the blade beside him. His breathing was steady, but his heart was sharp and ready. He had lived through too many nights like this, nights where silence was not safety, but warning. The wind screamed across the land, dragging with it the voices of the dead. Or perhaps not the dead, for mixed with the storm came sounds he knew well, the crunch of boots in the snow, the faint metallic clatter of weapons. The hunters were near. The man narrowed his eyes. He could see nothing through the wall of snow, but he did not need sight. He had learned to listen, to feel. His scars were not only on his body but in his instincts. They told him danger was closing in. Slowly he stood. The fire crackled as he moved. The mother stirred, opening her eyes halfway. "What is it?" she whispered, her voice weak. "Stay down," the man said, his voice calm but firm. "Keep the child close. Do not leave the fire." Fear returned to her eyes. She pulled her baby tighter and did as he said. She knew he would walk into the storm if needed. She knew he would face what she could not. The man stepped away from the circle of firelight. The snow swallowed him. His figure became a shadow in the storm. His blade gleamed once, then vanished. The mother watched, her breath caught in her throat. She felt useless, powerless. Her people had always said humans were dangerous. Yet here she was, trusting one with her life. Outside, the storm shifted. The wind carried more than snow now. It carried voices, harsh and cruel. The hunters were calling to each other in their guttural tongue, searching for survivors, searching for her. Her heart pounded. She pressed her child's face into her chest, praying the baby would not cry, praying the fire smoke would not give them away. And then she heard it. A sudden clash in the darkness. Steel on steel. A grunt. A scream cut short. The storm covered most of the sound, but not enough. She knew the man was fighting. She closed her eyes, her mind filled with images. Him standing alone in the snow, blades flashing, his body moving like fire in the frozen dark, one against many, yet unbroken. Time stretched. Every moment felt endless. The fire burned lower and lower, and she feared the light would die before he returned. Then silence. Too much silence. Her chest tightened. Had he fallen? Had the storm taken him too? She wanted to stand to look, but her legs would not move. She was weak, and fear held her down. She could only wait. Minutes later, a shape appeared through the snow. At first, she thought it was a hunter. Her heart stopped, but then she saw the familiar stride, the strong shoulders, the scarred face. It was him, the man. He stepped back into the firelight. His blade was wet with dark blood, his coat torn at the shoulder, but his eyes were sharp, alive. He did not stumble. He moved like a storm that had passed through and survived. The mother gasped. You fought them." The man said nothing. He wiped the blade clean and sheathed it. His silence was heavier than words. His body told the story. Blood, frost, and scars carried forward. The mother wanted to ask more, to know how many he had killed, how he had done it. But fear stopped her. She realized the truth. He was not just a man, not just a traveler. He was a weapon, sharpened by war. Unleashed in the snow, the child whimpered softly. The sound pulled her back to the present. She kissed the baby's head, whispering comfort. She glanced at the man again, her voice low. They will keep coming, won't they? He nodded once. Yes. Her throat tightened. Then we are doomed. The man's eyes lifted, meeting hers. For the first time, his voice carried heat. No, he said. Not while I still stand. His words struck deep. She saw no hesitation. In him no fear, only an iron will. The storm outside could howl. The hunters could come again and again, but this human would not yield. The fire snapped, throwing sparks into the air. The mother shivered, not from cold but from the weight of what she had seen. A man who carried his past like chains but fought with the strength of 10. A man who stepped into the storm without hesitation. A man who had no reason to save her, yet did. The night dragged on. The hunters did not return. Perhaps they feared him now. Perhaps they believed the storm itself protected her. But she knew the truth. It was not the storm. It was him. At dawn, the snow began to calm. The wind softened, and a faint gray light touched the sky. The mother looked at him, standing at the edge of the fire, his figure tall against the fading storm. He had not rested, not even for a moment. He had kept watch through the night, a silent guardian in the snow. The mother held her child close. Her heart whispered a truth she could no longer deny. This man, this human stranger, was the only reason she was alive. And as the first light of day broke through the clouds, she realized something even more unsettling. If he had the power to save her, he also had the power to change everything. The storm had passed, but the land was not quiet. Snow stretched, as far as the eye could see, broken only by the ruins of the mother's village. Smoke still rose faintly in the distance, a reminder of fire and death. The mother clutched her child tightly as the human led them through the frozen wasteland. His stride was steady, each step firm. He moved like a man who had walked through war before and expected more waiting ahead. His hand never left the hilt of his blade. The mother wanted to speak, to thank him, but fear closed her throat. She had seen what he did in the storm. She had seen how he fought. For her people, humans were stories. Violent, untamed, dangerous. But this man was no story. He was real, and he was far more terrifying than the tales. They stopped near a broken wall. The man raised a hand for silence. His eyes scanned the horizon. He listened carefully, every muscle sharp. The mother felt her breath freeze in her chest. Then she heard it too. The sound of boots crunching in the snow. Not one pair, but many. The hunters were coming. Her child whimpered softly. She pressed, a hand over its mouth, praying the sound would not carry. Fear flooded her. They would not escape. There were too many, but the human only stood, his jaw tight, his eyes cold. He pulled his coat tighter and drew his blade. The steel caught the weak light of dawn, and for the first time, she saw his face change. No longer calm, no longer silent, his scars twisted with fury. He turned to her. Stay hidden, do not move, whatever you hear, do not come out. Her heart raced. She wanted to protest, to beg him not to face them alone, but his voice carried no space for argument. His will was unshakable. He stepped away from her and into the open snow. The hunters appeared through the storm's tail. Tall, armored, their weapons gleaming with cruel light. They moved like predators, confident. They thought they were hunting the last of a broken village, but what they found instead was a human. The leader of the hunters laughed, his voice sharp. One man, you think you can stand against us? The human did not answer. His grip on the blade tightened, his stance widened. He looked at them, not as prey, but as obstacles. The hunters charged. Snow burst under their boots. their weapons raised, their voices filled the frozen air. And then, the human moved. He was fast, too fast. His blade cut through the first hunter before the others even reached him. Blood splattered across the snow, steam rising in the cold. The others faltered, shocked. But the man did not stop. He roared like thunder and struck again. The mother covered her child's eyes, but she could not look away. The human fought like a storm come to life. Each strike of his blade carried fury, each movement precise, unstoppable. The hunters tried to surround him, but he broke through their lines. His blade flashed, his fists struck. His body was a weapon honed by endless battles. One by one, the hunters fell. The snow turned dark with their blood. Their voices turned from confidence to fear. The leader shouted, "Kill him! He is only a man." But the human was not only a man. He was fury. He was the fire that would not die. The mother trembled. Her people had never fought like this. They had always run, always bowed. But here, a single human stood against many, and he did not yield. Her child whimpered again, sensing the fear in her heartbeat. She kissed the baby's head, whispering, "It will be over soon." But she was not sure if those words were hope or lie. At last, only the leader remained. His weapon shook in his hands, his armor cracked, his eyes wide with disbelief. The human stepped toward him, blood dripping from his blade. His face was calm again, but his eyes burned with something deeper. Rage, sorrow, memory. The leader tried to speak, but his voice broke. "What are you?" The human's answer was simple, human, and with one final strike it was over. The snow fell silently again, covering the bodies of the hunters. The wind carried away their last cries. The battlefield was quiet, but the quiet felt heavy. The human stood, chest rising with deep breaths. His blade lowered, his coat torn, his body bleeding from cuts. Yet he did not fall. His will alone kept him standing. Slowly, he turned back toward the broken wall. The mother stared at him with wide eyes. She could not believe what she had seen. Her people had always whispered of human strength, but this was beyond anything she had ever imagined. He walked back to her, his steps slow but steady. His eyes softened as he saw the child still safe in her arms. For a moment, the fury faded, replaced by something gentler. He knelt in the snow before her, his voice low. "Are you safe?" She nodded, though her hands shook. You fought them all." His lips pressed into a thin line. "Not all," he said. "More will come. They always do." The mother lowered her gaze, her heart heavy. But when she looked at him again, she saw something she had not seen before. Not just strength, not just fury, but purpose. This man had no reason to fight for her, yet he did. He had no reason to shield her child, yet he had given everything. His fury was not wild, it was controlled, directed, born from a promise she did not yet understand. The child reached a tiny hand toward him. The man stared at it for a long moment, then gently let the small fingers wrap around his scarred hand. The mother's eyes filled with tears. In the middle of death and ruin, she had found life again. She had found something even her own people had never given her. Hope. The fire of the human's fury was not destruction. It was protection, and, in that frozen wasteland, she realized the truth. This stranger had already changed her fate, and maybe he would change much more. The snow was quiet now, but the silence was heavy. The bodies of the hunters lay scattered across the white ground, dark stains melting into the frost. The storm had passed, but what remained was worse. The memory of battle. The human sat near the fire again, his blade resting beside him. His coat was torn, his arms carried fresh cuts, and blood marked his hands. Yet his face stayed calm. He moved with the same steady strength, as if wounds were nothing new. The mother watched him in silence. Her child lay asleep in her arms, breathing softly. For hours she had feared death, but now she feared something different. She feared the choice waiting for her. She owed her life to this man, this human. He had saved her when her own people had abandoned her. He had fought for her child when no one else would. Yet she did not understand him. He was a storm of fury and fire, a man cast out by his own kind. Why would he help her? Why risk everything? For strangers? Her voice was soft, almost broken. Why do you do this? The man looked up. His eyes met hers, sharp but not unkind. For a long moment he said nothing. Then in a low voice he answered, "Because I cannot walk away. Not again." The word struck her. "Again?" she whispered. His jaw tightened, his gaze turned toward the flames. "There was a time," he said, "when I had a chance to save someone. I failed. They died, and I carried that weight ever since. Every step I take, every battle I fight, it is all because I refuse to fail again." The mother's throat tightened. She looked down at her child, still warm against her chest. If not for him, her baby would already be gone. She pressed her lips to the child's forehead, her heart heavy. She whispered, "My people left me. They said I was too weak. They said a mother with no family had no place among them. They left me to die in the storm." Her voice cracked. "But you, a stranger, a human, you gave me fire." The man said nothing, but his eyes softened. He looked at the child, then back at her. "You are not weak," he said firmly. "You are still here. You held your child when the world froze around you. That is strength." Her eyes filled with tears. No one had ever spoken those words to her before. No one had ever seen strength in her suffering. The fire burned lower. Shadows stretched long across the snow. The man stood. His hand pressed against his side where blood seeped through his coat. His steps faltered slightly. The mother gasped. "You are hurt," he waved her concern aside. "It is nothing." But she saw the truth. His wounds were deeper than he admitted. His body was strong, but even strength had limits. She felt fear clawing at her heart. If he fell, if he left, she and her child would be alone again. Her hands shook. She had to make a choice. She could let him walk away, carry his pain alone, or she could step forward, choose not to be helpless anymore. Slowly, she laid her child down near the fire, wrapping the coat around the small body. She stood, her legs trembling, and stepped toward him. "Let me help," she said, her voice unsteady but determined. The man turned, surprise flickering in his eyes. "You cannot," he said. "I have fought through worse. I will endure this too." But she shook her head. "No, you are not alone anymore." Her words silenced him. He stood still as she reached for his torn coat. Her hands were clumsy, but gentle. She tore strips from her own cloth to bind his wounds. Her fingers brushed his scars, old and new. She felt the story of his life written on his skin. He watched her in silence, his breath steady, his eyes unreadable. For the first time, someone touched his wounds not as marks of violence but as proof of survival. When she finished, she looked up at him, her voice low. "You fight for us, but I will not let you fight alone. Not anymore." The child stirred and made a soft sound. The mother turned and lifted the baby back into her arms. Her eyes shone with quiet strength. "I choose to trust you," she said. "I choose to walk with you, wherever this path leads." The man's chest rose with a slow breath. His jaw tightened as if her words struck something deep within him. He had walked alone for so long, carrying ghosts. Yet here was a mother, fragile but unbroken, choosing to walk beside him. He looked at her child, then back at her. His voice was low, almost a whisper. "Then I will carry you both as far as I can until my last breath." The mother's heart ached, but also grew lighter. For the first time since her world had burned, she did not feel abandoned. She had made her choice. She would not let fear rule her anymore. The fire burned brighter for a moment, sparks flying into the night sky. The storm had calmed, but danger still lingered. The hunters would not give up. More would come, but as the mother sat beside the human, her child in her arms, she no longer felt powerless. She had chosen hope. She had chosen to trust the man who had saved her, and in the silence of the night, guarded by his presence, she realized something deeper. Her choice was not only about survival, it was about faith. Faith in a human who carried fire in his soul. Faith in the chance that together they could face whatever waited in the shadows. The long night was finally ending. The storm had thinned, and pale light began to stretch across the frozen horizon. The first hints of dawn painted the sky in silver and gray. The mother sat close to the fire, her child warm in her arms. The man stood a little distance away, his back straight, his blade sheathed. His eyes scanned the land with a soldier's patience. He had not closed his eyes once since the storm began. The mother studied him quietly. He looked like a figure carved from stone, scarred, unyielding, watchful. Yet beneath his silence, she sensed something more, a weight carried deep inside. He had saved her, fought for her, and bled for her, but who would fight for him? The child stirred, reaching small fingers toward the man. The mother hesitated, then whispered softly, "He wants you." The human turned. His sharp eyes softened when he saw the child reaching for him. Slowly, almost uncertainly, he stepped closer. The mother lifted the baby toward him, and for the first time he took the child in his arms. The baby's tiny hands touched his scarred face. The man froze, as if the touch cut deeper than any blade. He held the child carefully, as though afraid he might break something so fragile. The mother's voice was gentle. "He trusts you, even when the world gave us no reason to trust anyone. He does." The man looked down at the child, his lips pressed into a thin line. His eyes glimmered with something unspoken. Then he said in a low voice, "Children should never freeze in the dark, not while I live." The words carried a promise, not just to her child, but to every soul he could still protect. The mother felt warmth rise in her chest. For the first time in so long, she did not feel like a burden. She did not feel abandoned. She felt chosen, but the peace was short. In the distance, smoke rose into the dawn sky, dark, curling signals, hunters. They were still searching. The man handed the child back and tightened his coat. His voice was steady. "They will not stop, not until you are gone or I am." Fear pricked her heart. She looked at him desperately. "Then we cannot stay here. Where will we go?" He glanced at the horizon. His eyes narrowed. "There is a place beyond the frozen valley, past the iron cliffs. There are people who will not abandon you. I will take you there." The mother frowned. "But you? You were cast out by your own kind." A faint, bitter smile crossed his lips. "Even so, not all humans are like me. Some still build, some still protect. If you reach them, your child will live." Her throat tightened. She looked at him, truly looked. He was a man who carried fury and pain, but also hope. He had been sent away, but he still carried the fire of his people. He still believed in something greater than himself. The choice pressed on her heart again. She could turn away, try to survive alone, but she knew the truth. Without him, she and her child would already be gone. She stepped closer, her voice firm despite her fear. "Then take us. We will follow you." The man studied her for a moment, then gave a single nod. "Stay close. Do not look back." They began to walk. The snow crunched beneath their steps. The dawn grew brighter. The fire behind them faded into the wind. Ahead lay danger, but also hope. As they walked, the mother spoke quietly, almost to herself. "I thought I would die in the cold. I thought my child would never see the sun again. But then you came." Her eyes met his. "Why save us?" He did not stop walking. His voice was steady. "Because that is what humans do." The words hung in the cold air, simple yet powerful. They were not just words of kindness. They were words of defiance, a declaration that even in exile, even in sorrow, he would not let innocence die. The mother felt her chest tighten, not with fear, but with something new, a belief that maybe, just maybe, this man could change more than her fate. Maybe he could change the galaxy. They reached a ridge. From there she could see far across the valley. Endless snow stretched to the horizon, but beyond it, Faint lights glimmered in the distance. Civilization, a place alive with warmth and survival. The man stood at the edge, his coat whipping in the wind. His figure was tall against the rising sun. For a moment he looked less like a soldier and more like a symbol, a shadow of humanity itself, scarred but unbroken. The mother held her child close. Her voice trembled, but it carried hope. Perhaps my people were wrong. Perhaps weakness is not in holding on, but in letting go. The man glanced at her, his eyes steady. Weakness is leaving others to die. Strength is standing when no one else will. Together, they stepped forward, leaving the frozen grave behind. The dawn stretched wide before them. The hunters would come again, dangers would rise. But now, they were not alone. And so the alien mother, her tiny child, and the scarred human walked into the new day, carrying fire in their hearts in the cold silence of the galaxy. Hope had been reborn.